I'm Joe Helko, your host, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being for the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide a continuum of the highest quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance with emotional and behavioral challenges, a mental health diagnosis, substance use, or an intellectual or developmental disability. 2025 marks a milestone for NCSS Here for You, as it's the 20th year that we've produced shows on a monthly basis highlighting the numerous services provided by NCSS and organizations that we partner with in the community. This month, we'll be discussing Talking to Youth About Suicide, the Afterglow and NCSS partnership, and awareness and prevention efforts. In addition, we'll highlight the upcoming Afterglow Music Festival that shines a light on suicide awareness and prevention. Even today, a stigma exists where many parents don't discuss the subject of suicide with their children. Discussing sex, drinking, drugs, and other dangerous behaviors come more naturally. The goal of the Afterglow Foundation and NCSS is to change the narrative. To discuss Talking to Youth about suicide, the upcoming Afterglow Music Festival, and the relationship or partnership, I should say, between Afterglow and NCSS, plus the awareness and prevention efforts that are in place, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guests, Holly Branon, Program Manager of Children's Home and Community-Based Services, and Meaghan Malboeuf, Program Manager of Outpatient, Access, and Integrated Health. And I'd like to welcome both of you to this program this month.
Thanks,
Great to have you here. Now, let's get started with, when we look at the universe, if you will, in Vermont, our suicide death rate is higher than the national average. And in fact, suicide is one of the top 10 causes of death in Vermont. The Afterglow Foundation is dedicated to raising awareness and prevention efforts in addressing suicide. So to get us started today, let's hear from John Holscheider, who's the Afterglow co-founder and president.
After we lost our son, our mission was to teach parents how to talk to their kids about suicide. What we're doing with Afterglow is to develop programs to help parents be able to talk to their kids. Buy a ticket and come to the Afterglow show and, buy a sweatshirt or a hat that day. It all goes back to what we're doing. Afterglow is important because we shine the light on suicide and help save lives.
Now, in 2019, the Afterglow Foundation held their first music festival to shine a light on suicide awareness and prevention. This year, the music festival will take place on September the 20th. And let's hear from Andrea and Don Wells, who are Afterglow co-founders.
Afterglow is all about love and support.
We lost our son, and we wanted to make something good come out of something so tragic. NCSS has definitely played a vital role in helping us get there.
Having the community come to the concerts, support it, financially is great.
Being there that day when we all come together for Afterglow is a huge thing for people. I just describe it as maybe like a warm hug.
We do get people telling us that you've made a difference. That's pretty amazing.
Okay, so let's start with, can we talk about this initiative and NCSS's involvement in the music festival itself?
Yeah, so NCSS has been involved in the music festival since the beginning. There's a few of us on the board and the planning committee for Afterglow. So I've been lucky enough to be a part of that for a few years now. And throughout the year, we're working with Don and Andrea and John to plan the Afterglow Music Festival to provide some perspective, getting flyers out to people, on the ground talking about the music festival. And then at the actual festival, we have a tent set up where we have representation from NCSS there to really just talk about our services, to talk about ongoing initiatives and trainings that we have, and then just to make connections and talk to people. We know it can be a difficult day for some, so we're there to support them, but also there to hear stories of those who have been impacted by suicide and just to hear the stories of their loved ones who have died by suicide. It's a really powerful day, and we're really excited to be a part of it again this year.
And one of the interesting things about it is there are many who are there that have really been touched, or friends of individuals. But I think one of the fascinating things is the fact that sometimes it's so hard to get people to talk about suicide. But having a backdrop of a music festival, which is not, high stress, you know what I mean? It's just really a much more relaxed atmosphere, at least for those who may want to learn more, to take part in discussions.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm getting at, versus being in an office with a therapist, that type of thing. It's just such a more relaxed environment that I think a lot of people perhaps will at least lose some of that stigma in talking about that subject.
Yeah, and that's what I really appreciate about the Afterglow Music Festival is it's a really exciting day. It's a really fun day, and it's meant to be that the Holscheider family has really made it that way and made it a celebration of AJ's life. And it allows other people to celebrate the lives of their loved ones that have been lost as well. And what I really like about this year is they are doing a Taylor Swift cover band, which makes it fun for even youth and younger audience. And it just opens up the conversation and reduces that stigma even more and talks about it across the lifespan and just allows younger youth to be involved in that day as well.
Yeah. And I think, what is really important is in today's world, and especially with the ability with social media and everything, that it really is important to bring the subject up to young people at younger and younger ages than maybe in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with the funding that NCSS has received from the Afterglow Foundation over the years, can you speak to the wide range of training initiatives and other initiatives that we've engaged community members in to get them to learn more about suicide and prevention efforts?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we are really working on our prevention efforts at NCSS right now, and Afterglow funds are a big part of how we're able to roll that out and do that, is the You Matter trainings.
Mm-hmm.
You Matter is a Vermont training from the Center for Health and Learning that was established in 2012. And NCSS has been offering those trainings since 2017, but only recently have we really made an effort to have those trainings be consistent and responsive. We're rolling them out, especially in the school districts, as much as possible. With teachers, paraeducators, coaches, really any audience that's willing and ready to listen. And we've had a wonderful response from the community. We've done multiple trainings with Maple Run School District and Enosburg and Cald Hollow, and those are just to name a few. So I think the You Matter concept is that you don't need to be a clinical person to help prevent suicide, that this really can be a community effort. It's all about just showing you care, knowing the resources, connecting people to help. And so we're really trying to kind of educate the community on how just to be a bridge to that help, how to, bridge to us, be a bridge to NCSS services or crisis services or therapy services. And so it's been really encouraging how welcome we have been in the community. And it's also encouraging to have this partnership with Afterglow because they really have a mission of us connecting with the youth and with people in the community who are facing the youth, which is, a lot to do with schools and sports teams. And so we're working as hard as we can on that. And we've made it part of our strategic plan in our Zero Suicide Committee. So we've currently trained over 200 staff, 290 people. And I think 140 of those have been community members. So we're really trying to get that outreach throughout. We'd like to have all of NCSS trained, so not just clinical, and then out in the community, really as many people as we can. And we've had a great response from the community on that.
And Meaghan, the more people that gain a greater understanding of what a lot of the early warning signs are, the one thing that both of you know as individuals that work with clients is that the people that are closest to someone are the ones that are going to notice differences in their behavior. It's not somebody they see walking down the street or one of you who has not met them. It's going to really be somebody who's a family member or a good friend who's going to really recognize that, boy, so-and-so's behavior just seems to have really shifted, and I wonder why that is, and to be able to help them perhaps to seek help a lot earlier.
Yeah, and you've hit on a major focus of our training, which is to notice changes in people and then to ask them questions. And so I think a lot of what we're trying to do by offering these trainings is not to get anyone to do or act some specific way. It's really, like we've talked about since the beginning of this program, we're trying to keep the conversation going. We're trying to allow the conversation and encourage it and say, this is something we can all talk about. It doesn't have to be stigmatized. It doesn't have to be pushed aside. And so that is a lot of the training, is to acknowledge when you see a change in someone and ask questions about it.
Yeah, and another training we offer is mental health first aid, which there's 3 different curriculums. So there's a curriculum for adults, and then there's a curriculum for adults that are working with youth, and then a curriculum for high school students, which is really exciting. And with the partnership with Afterglow, with the funds that they donate to us year after year, it also allows us to offer those trainings to our community. So You Matter is a smaller, more condensed training, and the mental health first aid training is a more in-depth training around, looking for some of those warning signs and then going through an action plan of really how to approach someone who you think is having a mental health crisis or who may be suicidal. And it's giving skills to either adults to work with a friend, adults who work with a youth. We really go into schools and teach educators about that. What we know is they have the eyes on youth most of the time, and oftentimes don't feel like they have the skills to engage with a youth who's going through a difficult time. And really, we're there to validate that they do, but also teach them how to listen non-judgmentally, how to give advice, how to connect them to support, and like Meaghan said, how to be that bridge. And then we also have the teen mental health first aid training, which is one of my favorites. One of my favorite parts of my job is going into the schools and talking to teenagers about how to support a friend who may be going through a mental health crisis or maybe having suicidal thoughts. Because again, like we've mentioned, they are most familiar with their friends, and they'll be the first to know what's going on for them. And we also hope that resonates for them, so that if they're struggling, they know also how to reach out to help for themselves. So.
And the other thing about this subject is the fact that this can be anyone.
Yeah.
This is not driven by socioeconomics and that sort of thing. I mean, you can be the wealthiest person in the world and be the most depressed and maybe get to a point where you're thinking, what is the purpose? So it can be anyone who's struggling. I think a lot of times people think I'm the only one who is got these thoughts or is depressed or anxious. And that certainly is not true. By how many people every year seek assistance. Yeah. And then there's so many who don't, and they wait. In a perfect world, wouldn't it be great if people looked at their mental health and sought assistance as quickly as they do with their physical health?
Yeah.
If someone, you know what I'm saying, so.
Yeah, I say that every time I do a training, whether it be You Matter or mental health first aid. We talk about the reason we're here to do this is to decrease stigma, and we want people to feel as comfortable walking into NCSS or Spectrum or NFI or a private therapist as comfortable as they are walking into their primary care physicians or pediatricians. Yep. We really want to kind of knock down that stigma and have people talk about it and and feel comfortable getting the help that they need. And I really do think with the support of Afterglow and these trainings we're able to provide, we really are knocking down this stigma, and more people are talking about it in our community.
Yeah, and speaking of pediatricians, great segue. I know that in addition, that I understand that recently we began a program of meeting with pediatricians and want to continue to do that on a quarterly basis. And how has this helped with identifying the early warning signs with patients and everything else surrounding this topic?
Yeah, so right along the same lines of the community connectedness, we're really trying to involve the community and connect and try to find themes and issues that we're all seeing that are coming into the doctor's office or primary care, but also, we're seeing at NCSS. And so we've met twice so far, and it's been a wonderful conversation both times. I think a lot of the things that have come up that we talked about so far are an increase in childhood and adolescent anxiety. We're seeing a lot of anxiety and depression. I think, we know that, we hear it, but in our community, it's very relevant and very real right now. So we have talked about ways to address that. We've talked about the impacts on social media that has come up, and ways that we can talk to parents across the board and talk to kids and teens about, we know this isn't going away necessarily, but how can we keep this as healthy a portion of our life as possible?
Sure. Yeah. And the fact remains that, a pediatrician, once again, is someone who may be able to kind of read between the lines sometime when somebody is in their office as to behavioral changes from what they've seen the last time they were in. So I think that's great all of this outreach and all the various ways that NCSS is embedded, whether it's law enforcement or, schools, is all great in an effort to try to reduce the stigma and get kids to open up and try to deal with circumstances that they may be undergoing and hopefully seek treatment.
Yeah. And we're all in it together, and being in a room with the pediatricians, with those of us at NCSS, with our psychiatrist, with our crisis team, we're all just kind of validating each other that we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing. And it just feels like the collaboration and partnership is really strong right now, which is just better off for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's my understanding that recently there was a 2-day Connect postvention training that was held, and that numerous local organizations were in attendance, and this was to promote healing and reduce risk after a suicide. And why is this training so important for our community?
So the Connect training was really a very impactful 2-day experience for us. So we invited members of kind of all facets of community. So we invited members from healthcare, from human services outside of NCSS, from faith leaders, and law enforcement and first responders. So really trying to think about anyone who might have an impact following sudden death by suicide. And so why this is so important is that we know that there are many layers of impact after one suicide. They say that, our research says that up to and over 100 people are impacted by one suicide. And many of us believe it's often much larger than that. So it's a way for us as NCSS, we have provided postvention services for a while. This was a national trainer brought in who educated all of us as community members for 2 days on the best way to respond, because we know that we can help survivors better when we're educated. We also know that we can reduce the risk of another suicide by responding in a healthy and appropriate way. And so it's extremely important. And I personally was just so impressed that the community members who came were so willing to give 2 full days of their time. It was a lot. And we had a really great turnout and great conversation and very impressive training. And so I think the whole theme we've been talking about today is as much as we can do things together and not so much in isolation, it's better for the youth, it's better for our community. And this was a great example of that. And so we received training not only on suicide and on the actual postvention, but also on like media response and responding to schools, which we have done a lot of in the past, but this was kind of like involving all layers and all levels of community. And it was really quite profound. It was really an impressive training.
And going back to Afterglow, I think it's just important to highlight there that John Holscheider and other members of the board were present for those days as well, which really I think just speaks to their mission of making our community better and decreasing suicide. So I think, it just, again, highlights that partnership and collaboration that we have with them.
Yeah, that's terrific. And separately from that, when we talk about programming at NCSS, and when we talk about after a particular suicide, NCSS also on a monthly basis offers a survivors of suicide program which again I think is very important for individuals that are really struggling after an event like that. So it is something that NCSS does also offer.
Yes, a support group for any survivor experiencing.
Which again, I think is very important from a standpoint that people are not alone. There are others who have gone through, even though the means and everything might have been totally different, the reality is when the reality sets in of what has occurred, there are others who have also faced that. And I think like with anything else we talk about, support is critically important for people to be able to navigate.
Yes, and as much as we're talking about the community partnership and how much we value that, I mean, we don't want to underestimate the fact that still call us, right?
Oh, yeah,
Still call
absolutely.
us for
Yes.
whatever you need. We're still here. We have therapy, we have emergency services, we have support groups. So we still absolutely are here and want people to reach out to us.
Yeah, and we talk about these larger trainings too, but like Meaghan's saying, call us for anything. We've, the trainings we offer have definitely caught some traction, and we've had people reach out to us just, even if it's not suicide related, like come to our sports team and talk about mental health and how important that is in adolescence. And no matter what it is, whether it's one of these like evidence-based trainings we had, or even just one of our clinicians going and talking about it, there's no kind of wrong door to get the word out and to talk about mental health and how we can support those with mental health challenges in our community.
And, speaking of youth and sports teams and that, I know from an Afterglow Foundation standpoint, talking to both the youth and their parents is a critical part of the mission that I know they're very happy NCSS is getting involved in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because once again, I think parents a lot of times need to hear from NCSS, and just because say somebody's an athlete or they're in a certain club or what have you, does not mean that there's no possibility that they might be struggling either with a mental health concern or even suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said in your intro, we talk about a lot of other things, and we should be talking about suicide as well. Yeah. And that can be really scary for families. So
very much so.
The more we can talk about it in our community, the more we can kind of have opportunities like this to talk about it. The Afterglow Foundation, the Afterglow Music Festival, those things. Hopefully it makes people a little more comfortable talking about it, because it can be scary, but we need to be talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, youth are facing increased daily pressures that can certainly affect their mental health. And much of that can be attributed to technology. And I know we've touched a little bit on things like social media. But what tips do you have that can help them in coping with these challenges throughout their daily lives?
I think that we have specific tips, and then my big picture tip would be to make sure that every child has a sense of meaning and purpose outside of their social media, and also has personal connection and relationship outside of their social media. So making sure that that isn't their primary social relationship, making sure that isn't the primary hobby, maybe say, and just making sure that they have quality time outside of their social media. I say it's very important to me, what are the youth doing when they're not on their social media?
Yes.
So we know that it's very likely they are going to engage at some level with either technology or social media. So thinking about, do they have a trusted adult that they speak to in person? You know, we know that this is a major protective factor for youth, is having an in-person trusted adult. You know, if they can have one at each location they go to, that's even better. So always thinking about what else is in their life, what else is in their time, and that can build them up, give them the self-esteem, confidence. And I think Holly can also talk to some more like practical tips about social media.
Yeah, when I'm in, the classrooms giving the teen mental health first aid training, this is a big topic of conversation. It's a big section of that training because we do know that youth are going to use social media. It's part of our world now. And really, the conversation is open and talking to them about what are the pros and cons to social media, but then also taking it a step further. And when do you know you have to put some limits around social media? And we talk a lot about that. A lot of the training is, thinking about typical adolescent development and what changes are they going through, but then also talking about some warning signs. And then I really relate that to social media. So, looking at some of those warning signs like withdrawing from friends or family, not getting the sleep, if you're feeling anxious, or having any of those signs and symptoms we talk about while using social media, or when thinking about using social media, that can indicate that it's time to set some boundaries around that. So just having really open conversations around, how this is going to be a part of our world. This is definitely a part of the teens' worlds that we talk to, and just knowing that, how can we put some parameters around it, and some impact of some healthy coping skills if they're needing it. And like Meaghan's saying, looking at those resiliency factors and what are those routines and consistencies and activities that they like doing, and making sure that they're still doing those while also engaging in that social media use. But it is definitely a big topic of conversation. I would say that first meeting we had with the pediatricians, we talked about this 90% of the time. Like, it is definitely a concern that we all feel and we all know is out there. So it's really just giving the youth the skills to kind of navigate it.
Yeah, and I mean, it is huge. And, it reminds me that our medical director, Dr. Strokoff, had mentioned once that the first school district in the United States to not allow cell phones into the classroom, of all places, was Silicon Valley.
Oh, interesting.
And that's because those that are creating all of this are very well aware of, if there's a tipping point and you're trying to avoid that. So I just thought that was rather fascinating. And I know there's an initiative here locally now in our schools. But I just thought it was fascinating that the very first school district in the entire country a couple of years ago was actually there, where so much of this is being created and developed and what have you. So, I mean, that says something about what you're saying about wanting to put limits and trying to somehow navigate and let youth still engage, but yet not maybe go overboard. And to your point earlier, Meaghan, having friends that are in person, and it's just very critical. Yeah. So anyway, and we will leave the topic there because believe it or not, our time is up. And I do want to thank my guests, Holly Branon and Meaghan Malboeuf, for sharing their insights on talking to youth about suicide, the upcoming Afterglow Music Festival, and the Afterglow and NCSS partnership, and the suicide awareness and prevention efforts that take place. I also want to thank all of our viewers and listeners for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about all of our programs and services by logging on to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Helko, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.